Hey, it's Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair, and it's the Thursday night after hours for some of us, phone tech talk. And tonight we have all sorts of interesting stuff to talk about. I've got some announcements to make. Glad to see we got some people in the chat already. I'm always happy when I see you guys show up, so thank you for that. Probably at the top of the list, Oreo for Galaxy S8. Finally here, at least as of right now. It's probably available for most people. I know this morning it was Germany only, but that was supposed to be no more than 24 hours before you could get it anywhere. So if you've been waiting since August to upgrade to Oreo, you should be able to do that on your Galaxy S8 and S8 Edge. If you're running Android 7.0, apparently you have to go from 7.0 up. That is at least my understanding as to how that works. iPhone 10s not being able to connect the calls, well, that could be a problem. Doesn't seem like a common one. We're going to talk about that also. The iBoot source code leaked. Apparently this happened a long time ago, but now we're just really starting to hear about that. We'll talk about what that means. And a dating site where they suggest that you make sure you're on your phone game because women will judge you accordingly. That's what I've been told anyways. Also have some great guests coming up for the next Google Hangout. I'm really excited to tell you about that as well. We're going to get started right after this. So this is truly an amazing time to live in, I think. Don't you guys? I mean, phones are great, computers, technology, tablets, and shooting rockets to Mars, you know, with a car as the payload, which is kind of an eccentric thing to do, I believe. But at the same time, I mean, if you were Elon Musk and you could pay to send a rocket into orbit around Mars, or at least that was the intention. My understanding is it overshot a bit, so it may end up in an asteroid belt somewhere. So that's kind of a weird thing. And if you think about this, you know, of all the sci-fi movies that you might have seen in your lifetime where they come across some alien life form, which it seems like the odds are infinitesimally remote, especially within our own solar system. But for them to come across a Tesla Roadster that has a dummy inside of it, I just have to wonder, like, what would any intelligent life form think if they come across this vehicle that's clearly designed to operate where there's gravity and it has a dummy inside of it? You know, is it first look, hey, that is some form, you know, some form of alien life? No, it's not. It's just a hollow shell. It's kind of a bizarre thing to do if you ask me. But anyways, there was a question right before I started here, and I wanted to jump back to that really quick. We were talking, Johnny had asked if, talking about Samsung releasing a flexible screen, and we've been hearing about this for a long time, and also the follow-up was, you know, if they do, would Apple then do something similar? And I have to say, my first thought is that Apple seems to really enjoy being the first to do something. I'm sounding glitchy. Okay, can you guys describe, when you say glitchy, is anyone else here having audio problems on that end? Because if so, I will try to fix that before we continue. And I'm on a 25-second delay here, so I'm going to give it 30 seconds. And, you know, really, I just kind of do the warm-up stuff here because I know that people kind of trickle in, and I want to give everyone a chance to get on before we go too far. That was odd. My electricity just kind of went funny there for a second. And fortunately, the car next door that was blasting music stopped, because I'm always concerned when there's music playing outside. I like music, but if it picks up on my microphone and YouTube recognizes it as copyrighted materials, it will get my video flagged. So, you know, if you can imagine of all the excuses you might give your neighbors to turn the music down, if you went next door and said, hey, I'm trying to live stream on YouTube, can you turn it down here? They probably look at you like you're crazy, I'd imagine. But let's see. So maybe it was the Coconut Wireless. I certainly hope so. Again, if anyone hears any audio or video problems, let me know. We'll try to get that taken care of. So getting back to that, though, you know, Johnny, I really strongly suspect that anytime Apple does something, they want to be the first to, if not introduce it, the first to popularize it. That's why, because if it's Samsung that comes out with a truly flexible, and I mean like a foldable screen, this is, I think, what everyone wants to see, right? Something that actually folds in half and not a notched, you know, two displays linked together with a big bezel in the center, because that really doesn't fit the expectation that most people have, I think, which just is a foldable OLED display, which they're talking about. Now, if Samsung does that, And Samsung is a big company, you know, obviously probably Apple's, you know, biggest competitor. If Samsung does it first, I suspect that Apple will do something exactly the opposite, or something more original, you know, something that they can say, we are the first to innovate and bring you this. I couldn't see them copying Samsung. Now, usually what they'll do is take ideas from other companies or buy those trademarks or copyrights or technology or whatever it is from somewhere else, and then you know, put it into their device. But I would be surprised if they did something, you know, following Samsung, so to speak, something that easy to recognize as, hey, we did this first, and then Apple goes, oh, well, we're going to get that too. Some reason I don't think so, but that's just me. Watching the Elon's rocket came back to Earth, I thought it was all CGI. The video looked amazingly choreographed. Hey, Harvey, you know, well, hey, what's up, Beha? I'm just blown away to see that a rocket can land upright. You know, for the longest time, you would only see that in some sort of fictional representation, whether it's a movie or an illustration or whatever it is. But to actually see a rocket that can balance itself, and well, 2 out of 3, right? Because apparently one of them did not make it. But to be able to land those fuel containers and reuse them, that's pretty amazing. And yeah, I got the same feeling when I watched it. It was almost surreal. It did seem like it was almost computer generated, but as far as we know, it's true, right? And as far as we know, the Earth is round. At least it sure looks that way from what I've seen. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's so huge that this is happening right now, which means in the next 10 to 15 years, this could look like nothing. You know, there could seriously be people living on Mars, which is another crazy thing to me, you know, to assume that if you were to fly to Mars, in this lifetime, you're probably not coming back. You know, that's probably it. You get there and you start over, and then that's it. You're going to live, you're going to travel to, and you're going to die on Mars if you go there, and then your descendants obviously will be there for some period of time. So it's an interesting thing to think about. Now, here is what we do want to talk about that has to do with phones, and that is Galaxy S8 finally getting Android Oreo, and this is supposed to be available. Let me pull up. I thought I had my notes right here again, and of course I did not. But this is supposed to have been released already in Germany, and it's going to be available for unlocked devices first. So typically when you have a carrier locked device, it's going to take a little longer to get access to some things, you know, depending on what it is. And in this case, for whatever reasons, I don't know if this is typically how it works, but they launched this in Germany first. So Germans had access to this already. And this, friends, is what I think is just crazy. I'm going to put this in the chat because it doesn't really have to be in the stream. But this is the firmware version for Oreo for the Galaxy S8. That I don't. Do you think that's completely random that they came up with that and put that at the end? Because I've been told there's also another firmware version that ends with BRA, B-R-A, on the end of it, and I just wonder if someone doesn't know what that means. Maybe English is not their native language, or maybe they're just trying to be funny. You never know. So let's see. The update is 487 megabytes, but that's only because you might be running an Oreo version on your phone. What does that mean? But that's only because you might be running an Oreo version on your phone. Okay. Within 24 hours, which would be more like 12 hours from now, regular Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus users who are still on Nougat should get the full Oreo upgrade. Like with any other upgrade, make sure you back up your sensitive data, which we know no one does. No, actually, the people who back up their data have already done that. Hopefully, they don't wait for an upgrade to do so. And in most cases, people either back up regularly or don't back up at all. So one of the reasons that we're here, right? So make sure you have enough battery life, of course, or your device is plugged in. This is one that we've actually seen a few times where people have attempted to perform an upgrade, and whether somehow they lost power to the device during that process, or even with something in, you know, back in the day, I don't know if this is still the same, but we used to do iPhone upgrades over the internet. So we would plug them in, I'm sorry, not over the air, but we would plug them into iTunes and we would upgrade iPhones or restore them. And there apparently was a crucial point during the restore process, I believe, when it's actually signing with Apple. You know, it's got to be connected to the internet. It's got to be connected to Cupertino or wherever it is to do some sort of handshake and allow the restore to take place. And if you disconnected your internet service, or you unplugged the phone from the computer, or you lost power on the phone during that crucial phase, it bricked. And there was nothing that you could do to bring it back. You could not reinstall anything. It would not recognize on iTunes. There was no way to get that operating system back on. So we kind of learned that, you know, from other people's experiences, that you always want to make sure that you have a consistent internet connection if you're dealing with an iPhone restore or upgrade. And of course, if you're upgrading even something like Android, you want to make sure that you have a solid connection, or you may end up having some problems. So I don't know how many of you are using Android or how excited you are about this upgrade, but apparently it is a big deal. I've been using an iPhone for the last few months, so I'm kind of out of the loop on a lot of this. But beyond the Galaxy S8, they will apparently be supporting the S8 Active, the Note FE, the Galaxy 7 series, as well as various Galaxy A, J, and C devices, but it doesn't tell me exactly which ones those are. And of course, you'll have to wait for those releases as well. They won't be available apparently right off the bat like the Galaxy S8 stuff will. And let's take a look at... actually, I want to save that for the end because that's more fun, and I want to do the fun stuff last. Funner stuff, I should say. So iPhone owners are talking about their handsets not accepting any incoming calls. I haven't run into this myself or heard anybody talk about it. I'm very interested to hear if anyone has, because I have a lot of questions about this. You know, my thought is that if you have an iPhone 10 and the phone rings and you press the power button, I assume that ends the call, but I don't have an iPhone 10, so I'm not 100% certain about that. That would have been, you know, if I had an Android device, that would have been my first thought, is when the phone rings, if the screen doesn't turn on, you hit the power button, it lights up the screen, and you can proceed from there. But one of the things that always kind of got me about at least the previous iPhone models is that, you know, when the proximity sensor has problems, and for anyone out there who happens to come into the stream, I want to make sure that everyone knows what this is. So when your screen is on your phone, and you place a phone call, you probably notice that the screen goes black as you place the phone call when you bring the phone up to your head. And that is, of course, to prevent you from pressing buttons or disconnecting the call, you know, or making any sounds on the keyboard while you're talking to someone. And then, of course, when you move the phone away from your head, the screen lights back up so that you can key in any entries you want to if you're using an IVR, disconnect call, anything like that. Well, there's a sensor inside the phone that makes the screen, it basically allows the screen to know when you're bringing it up to your face, so it knows to shut the screen off. And if that sensor goes bad, one of two things happens. Either the screen stays on all the time, which is quite annoying if you're trying to talk to someone and, you know, the screen's pushing up against your face, or it goes black immediately and then you cannot press anything on the screen. So again, our workaround for that with Android, of course, is just to hit the power button. You hit the power button, you turn the screen back on, and you can enter whatever you want. And if the screen is on and you want to turn it off, you hit the lock button. Same thing, right? Well, with iPhones, traditionally, if you're in the middle of a call and you press the power button, you disconnect the call. So when it came to iPhones with proximity sensor problems, this was a very, you know, I need to get this fixed right away because I literally cannot accept my phone calls, because when I press the power button, it just ends the calls. Now, I don't know if that's still the case with the iPhone 10. That would seem to be the short-term workaround to answer the call. And what we've been told is that if you reboot the phone, then it will start working again. But of course, you shouldn't have to reboot your phone every time you want to accept a call, and then, you know, you're going to miss a call, you're going to have to call somebody back. So I assume that they are working on this. There's not a whole lot of information available at this time. They're just saying that some owners are complaining, of course, that their high-dollar handset won't accept incoming calls. So obviously that could be a problem. I guess maybe they should buy a dongle and a headset. Okay. But, you know, seriously, I am a huge proponent of Bluetooth devices, but, you know, obviously I don't walk around with my Bluetooth turned on and paired to my phone all the time. So this is a real problem, and I'll keep everyone updated. Hopefully they'll have more information about that in the near future, but for the time being, Apple has said that they are looking into it. So we don't know really for sure what's going on with that. Let's see. I am building an S8 out of parts from Samsung. Cool. Let's see. Oh, don't tell them. All right. Hoping I can do a little late for that, right? Hope I can do IMEI right. You probably can. I don't know if you can with oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that has had an IMEI altered for quite a long time. So let us know if what happens with that? Text e-porting proximity sensors after screen repairs on the X. Oh, after screen repairs. That's interesting. And I wonder if there is, if it's limited to screens that have been replaced. So you're talking about your text, Hawaii, because I'm really interested to see, you know, how does the phone behave exactly? Is it going black? Like, is the screen going black as soon as the phone rings? Do you have any options as far as connecting it to a power source or hitting any of the buttons? Does that affect it? And then, of course, if it's working again after it reboots, I wouldn't expect that to be a proximity sensor issue, but anything's possible, right? Reporting. Okay, oh, so now that everyone's here, first of all, let me say cheers as I indulge in my grape juice of choice. And I want to make sure before I forget that I let you all know we have a bunch of guests lined up. Last week, actually, we had a few people on for a Google Hangout on Thursday night, and my plan is to do that again next week. I don't know if it's really... I don't know if we really want to do this every single week. I'm actually very interested to hear what you guys felt about it and what your preference is. We do a Monday afternoon live stream at 2 p.m., which is this format. So it's just news and talk and pretty much me. I really had a great time. The guys that came on were awesome, and I love the way everything worked out. So I definitely want to do that in the future. I'm just not sure if it's going to be every Thursday or not, but from the responses that I've gotten, I have quite a few people who are going to be coming on. And in fact, I wanted to just make an announcement real quick so that you'll know, have a heads up, and then I'll give you more information on everyone who's coming in between now and when they appear. So we'll kind of know what to expect. So we are going to have, let's see, we're going to have Scott from the techspeaks.com. We are going to have Andy Isom from learnhowgroup.com, and these guys all have YouTube channels also, so that was kind of my preference, to go to YouTubers first, because it's just, everyone knows how everything works here, and there's less for me to do to kind of get them into it. Also, we have Chris Voss from the chrisvossshow.com, and this guy's all over the place. He's got podcasts, he's got YouTube, he has a website. I think he does some other stuff on Twitter and Instagram. Well, obviously everyone's Twitter and Instagram, but he's got quite an internet presence. All very interesting guests. Oh, and actually I left out a couple. There are two more, and I at this point not even sure how I'm going to arrange this. We have Shannon Morse from Hack5, and then we have one more. Where did I put her name? I want to make sure I make these announcements. Oh, where'd she go? I have one more here, and I think it's Rhonda. Oh gosh, where'd I put her? I think I filed her under collaborators. Shannon Morse and Rhonda Grandy from Matter Hackers Inc. So we've got all kinds of very interesting people coming on. I'm very excited. We're going to start it off next Thursday evening, and that will be possibly likely, but maybe likely weekly or bi-weekly. So maybe every other week. I'm not sure how to schedule that, but hopefully you guys had as good of a time and found as much useful information as I did. I was not only entertained, but also enlightened on some information. So that's always fun. I love to learn. That's what I'm all about. So Hack is good. Hack5 is good. Good. I'm glad you think so. I've briefly had conversations and watched the channels that these people have, so I haven't had a face-to-face conversation. So when we do the Google Hangout, that'll be me meeting them and you meeting them. And so hopefully that will go as well as the last two have, because we've had great guests. We had Greg from Greggles TV. We had the techie guy, Liron Segev. We had Brian from the Tech Gooch. Yeah, the Tech Gooch. And then we had the Apple buyer also. I'm going to go blank on his name. I'll think of it in just a second. In any case, so that is coming up. I wanted to make sure I let everyone know about that. I also wanted to mention, while we're on the topic of Apple, this leaked iPhone source coded that, depending on who you talk to, you might hear that this is really a big deal, and from others you'll hear, well, that's outdated, that's from iOS 9, and it really isn't anything to be concerned about at this point. And there's no way to really know, I don't expect, unless you are, have some inside information at Apple. And obviously when you do, you have to be trusted not to release that information, because this was leaked, I guess, from someone who was part of the organization. They say it originally surfaced about a year ago on Reddit, and it just, but the way that Reddit works, I guess if you're not popular, people don't see your post, or if you don't have an active post history or something like that. So this post never really went anywhere until more recently when it got more exposure. And what they're saying is pretty much in the booting process on your iPhone, when you first turn your iPhone on, there is a system that's built in that I don't want to say, I suppose it has kernel access is how you would put it, but when it starts up, if you intercept that process, you can gain access to the phone in areas that you wouldn't normally be able to do. I hope that I'm explaining this correctly. So I'm not an expert on the subject. If anyone wants to bring more information to the table, by all means do so. But the thing about it is that this is one of the methods that's been used for a while for jailbreaks and that kind of stuff. And Apple has assured everyone that once they started using the secure enclave system with the iPhone S, and it's interesting because they refer to it as the secure enclave on board. And I was under the impression that the secure enclave was considered the part of the system that was built underneath the fingerprint scanner or attached to it. So maybe they mean that part, obviously the part that reads that system has to be on the board. I don't know. But in any case, up until the 5S, it was easier to access the boot sequence and make the phone do things that it shouldn't normally do. What they're saying is that with the iPhone 5S and the secure enclave, when you boot your phone up, and this iBoot process or whatever it is called, how you refer to it, engages, that it does a security check to make sure that only signed parts of the system have access to the kernel, and you don't have to worry about it anymore from the 5S and up. That's what I've read as far as Apple's response is. And at the same time, there are people saying that, well, what's happened is this code has leaked, but it's incomplete. So it's giving us, part of the picture, part of what we would need basically in order to hack into the phone, but not all of it. And so for most people, it's not very useful, but for people who do this, for entertainment or compensation, because you can apparently, obviously do both. Here's the interesting thing. If you find an exploit, this is, again, all of the information that I'm giving you is coming from sources that will be linked down in the video description when this is over, so you can go and read the full articles. I just generally get this stuff up to the minute, so I haven't posted it yet. But what they're saying is that Apple pays something in the neighborhood, I want to say $200,000 as a bounty for the specific type of security compromise that would be required to pretty much break into a secure enclave. So they will give you $200,000 if you figure out a way to get in, because obviously they are more concerned with protecting their assets and saying, hey, if there's someone out there who's smart enough to do this, show us and we'll pay you, instead of selling it underground somewhere, which you kind of think that if that was the case, at least historically, that's kind of what, it kind of got out there. And then people would, do whatever they're going to do, jailbreak the phone, compromise the security in some way or another, maybe install spyware, and then Apple would patch that exploit as soon as they found out about it, because it pretty much becomes public. But I'm trying to think of why it would make sense for someone to figure out how to bypass the security on an iPhone and then not collect on a bounty that the company is paying them. Why would they not do that? They would have to expect to make a whole lot of money doing something else. So I can only wonder at what that might be. But in any case, for Apple to say that, we're paying this amount of money, if you can figure it out, there it is. But at the same time, they're securing it. They're assuring us not to worry about it. And there are also people who are saying that some of what was used in iOS 9 may still be being used in iOS 11. So again, they may have part of the picture and be able to figure out how to hack into this phone, which Apple likes to think that no one is able to do. So the thing was that if you remember a while ago, they were using brute force methods to crack iPhone codes, and one of the things was they were able to continue to try codes over and over and over. And Apple is also saying that they built in a system on this secure enclave that will basically stop you from entering multiple passcodes. So you can't just keep guessing, go 0000, 0001. After you do 5 codes or 10 codes or whatever, you're locked out. So that's supposed to be one of the big, one of the features that was going to make that a little safer to work with. let's see what's going on here. Reporting. No, a post on Reddit. Maybe I can link. Sorry, sensor. Create a mobile botnet, which already exists. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And, you know, what I was thinking, this is probably going to sound ridiculous, but for some reason, the first thing that always comes to mind when I think about people finding ways to hack into devices nowadays, whether it's computers or phones or anything else, is cryptocurrency. Because you hear every other day there's some new thing. Someone even said, and I have no idea how much truth there is to this, but someone said recently that Google, what was it, that YouTube ads were injecting something that I'm such an amateur at this, I'm not even going to attempt to explain it, but they're saying that they're using, you know, obviously mining cryptocurrencies requires computing power, and they were trying to say that advertisements on your phone could inject malware into your device and use it to process this information to mine cryptocurrencies. And if that's true, that's just crazy. But you know, that's the thing that always comes to my mind when people talk about using other people, you know, getting into someone else's system and using it for their own needs, is like, okay, they're probably going to try to be, you know, probably going to try to mine cryptocurrency in one way or another. But what do I know? So what is a mobile botnet? So what do you do with a mobile botnet, I guess would be my question. And I don't know the answer to that. And I think that is almost all my topics that I wanted to get through. So I had one more, and this one is just, well, it's a good topic, I'd say. So, by the way, everyone, don't forget that next week is Valentine's Day. So whatever we normally, I shouldn't say we, whatever I normally wait until the very last minute to do, I'm going to try to do that much sooner, because it just sneaks up on you. But Valentine's Day next week, I want to say it's Wednesday, so remember that. And in the meantime, take a look at this and tell me what you think. And where is my chat? Why are we not on the chat? Okay, so let's get out of Falcon Heavy. And what just happened? Oh, no. Okay, so I'm going to have to fix this. That's a bummer. Let's get this going. Apparently, my slides were not fitted. Whoops. Okay, so here's the thing. You've heard of Match.com, right? Well, there's an article saying, sorry, I can't relax until this is centered. Okay, so there's an article saying that Match.com, through whatever sort of polls that they take or questionnaires that they have people fill out, they're saying that if you're a single guy, you want to make sure that you have a good phone, because your chances of, I guess I want to say impressing. Is it impressing? I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but excuse me one second, guys. So your chances of, I don't know, attracting a mate or something like that. And I don't know if this works the same way on the other side or not, but what Match is saying, according to this article, and this is on, where are we looking here? It'll come up in a minute. So according to this article, they're trying to say that women look at your phone, and if you don't have a decent one, you are going to reduce your chances of getting a date. Okay, so you know, when I read this, I thought, oh, that's kind of silly, and you know, if that's what she thinks, well, but then, you know, that's just my attitude speaking. What about, you know, realistically thinking about this? Because as you observe people, I didn't center that, did I? As you observe people in the world and their behavior, I am always fascinated by the way that technology affects how we interact with other people. You know, it's been a long time that we've pretty much been limited to face-to-face communication. You know, if you think of the history of humans, right? So it's always been like, how do you act with another person present? Now we're using communication, you know, methods of communication that we didn't have before. You know, telephone's only been around for what, like 100 years? I'm probably off on that, but it hasn't been around that long. And before that is, you could write someone a letter, I suppose. That would be the equivalent of very slow email, right? But you couldn't instantly connect, see someone's face, you know, do all this kind of stuff. So the reason I say that is, you know, I'm wondering if your phone fits more into the category of how people observe your style, let's say, you know, because phones are to a certain extent something that people want to look attractive, right? I mean, let's be honest. You look at some phones, you go, wow, that phone looks really nice. So there's that appeal to it. And at the same time, especially now, this is more relevant than it's been ever before. And obviously that is, you can always say that, right? Everything is always more this than it ever was before, because otherwise we'd be going backwards. But seriously, phones are now costing, for the most part, on, you know, in the mainstream market, much more than they ever have. So when someone's carrying around a $1,000 phone, I don't want to say that, I mean, I suppose it is a status symbol, right? But you could almost look at it that way, or you could look at it as you would look at a very nice pair of shoes or jewelry or something like that, right? So it's fitting into these two different categories. It is an indication, to an extent, it is an indication of your success, if you look at it that way, right? And at the same time, it's almost a fashion accessory. You know, people take it out and, oh, this looks cool. Look at this. They're showing a green one on the screen, you know, and people do like to, some people like to bling out their phones a bit. But when you see stainless steel, it looks so nice compared to plastic, right? Let's be, I mean, I'll admit that. There's a much better, just on the appearance. It's pleasing to look at. So we have that aspect, and then, you know, the style aspect. And I'm not judging anyone. I'm just curious, you know, what do you guys think about this? And you know, their polls said that men don't really look at it the same way for the most part. So when we say men or women, obviously we're talking about majority, we're not talking about everyone, but for the most part, women seem to see this as a much more important attribute to look for in a potential mate or someone they're going to date. And you know, that could have a lot to do with traditional roles as well, obviously. But I'm very interested to hear what you guys think about that, and you know, what that means, like, and how does that change things? How important is a phone? And at the same time, I have to tell you this story because it's really, I think it's funny and sad at the same time. So I was working in a retail store with another technician who had been there for years, and we had been working together for quite a while. And a girl came into the store, and as she was coming in the door, another customer had a brief conversation with her, and you know, everyone was smiling, and it seemed like they were getting along, and myself and the other technician thought that these two people might end up seeing each other, you know, after the fact. And we couldn't really hear the conversation. They were at the other end of the store, but we could see some phones coming out and stuff like that. So the female ended up leaving. The guy comes in, and he was about, you know, in our age group. So we said, hey, man, you know, because, you know, it's hard not to notice what was happening. And we said, hey, man, you know, how did it go? What's going on? And he said, yeah, I got this girl's number. Okay, great. So he ends up leaving. And a little while later, the girl ends up coming back to the store, and we started talking, and she was very friendly, and we, you know, started making small talk and stuff like that, and kind of brought up the gentleman that she had spoken to in the store previously. And she said, oh, him? Oh, no, she said something. Oh, she said, no, he gave me his number, and it was a Metro number, and to her, a Metro PCS phone number, and to her, that was a deal breaker. So after she left, we were just kind of in awe of like what had happened, you know, because she seriously just laughed this person off based on not the model of phone that they had, but the carrier that they were using. So again, just very very odd to observe, right? So over time, we started talking to other people that came to the store, and it was crazy, like the number of girls that we talked to in the store who kind of had the same response. We said, what would you think of a guy that had this phone, or had this phone, or had this phone? And quite often we got a reaction that kind of eliminated that other person from their consideration, which I thought was really crazy. Let me go back here to the comments real quick. Gold digger, yeah. I mean, I had that reaction too, initially. I'm just an observer. What's up, Wayne? How's it going? Aloha indeed. Mike, if you can ever figure out why a woman thinks the way they think, you'd be a millionaire. Yeah, I'm not gonna try to figure it out. I'm only going to try to figure out how to respond. That's really the best thing that I can do, and probably the right thing to do, I think. But yeah, I agree. It's hard to figure out a lot of people's motivations, especially if you don't live the same type of life they do, if you are biologically different than them, if you are, grew up in a certain environment. Everything's a factor, right? So I agree completely, but I was really surprised at the number, the percentage of the people that we talked to, the girls that we talked to, at least said that they felt the same way. Now, there could also be some sort of concern about her appearance too. Maybe she thought she had elevated her status somehow socially by saying that to us. I don't know. There's that factor too. But anyways, I thought that was interesting. I am fortunate not to have to worry about that either way because I'm not single. But were I single now and read this article, I probably would have said, well, the sad thing is, what I probably would have done is pulled out a very old phone and started using that just to get a reaction and maybe measure some depth, hopefully, or possibly just eliminate myself from consideration too. That might be what happened. But that was interesting. It would certainly make me self-conscious. Honestly, if I had a $1,000 phone, which I don't, and I knew that people were judging me according to what kind of phone I used, I probably wouldn't use that phone. Probably wouldn't use a really cheap one either. That's weird, huh? Just thought about that. Perhaps using Metro PCS states that you don't have the finances to have a traditional phone plan. Well, that was the thing, Harvey. The reason that I really thought this was interesting is because it's not just about a gold digger may have this reaction. That is absolutely true. But also someone who has good intuition, as we call it, about what to expect from that other person's ability to provide in one way or another, and that doesn't, that can mean anything. But is it only saying, oh, I'm only after this guy for his money, or yeah, is it an indication that he's not able to really even get the phone that he's happy with having, right? So it all depends on what you look at it, how you look at it, I suppose. I wonder what a woman would think of one of my phones using Freedom Pop. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That would be the funniest thing. I really think I would show up with something like that, like a $9 amount. Maybe I would get a free government phone and show up just to get a reaction. I think you'd probably eliminate yourself at that point, I suppose. So let's see, what else do we have here? You're either frugal or a cheapskate. Good point. That's another one, is have you not ever run into very wealthy people who are quite frugal, like to an extreme, to the point where they die very wealthy and without, what you would think would be some of the material thing, or material comforts at least, that people would typically want to spend their money on first, right? I would tell her, like your phone. I would tell her, I like your phone. It looks new. Good, you can pay for a dinner bill tonight. Good call. Good call, Wayne. I would use that one. There's the answer right there. All right, I am going to switch this over just so we don't stay on that too much. But yes, it is going to be Valentine's Day, so anyone who needs to be concerned about that, keep it in mind. Can we go back to this? Yeah, we can. There's my rocket ship. So I want to say that was a lot of the stuff that I had on the list. Let me double check here and make sure I did not skip anything. And Hawaii, you said you ordered, oh, I also want to go back to that. Hawaii, you said that you had ordered the micro USB version of that TriStar tester, as they call it. I suppose it has another name. And as soon as I ordered that, I kind of thought the same thing. I should have looked for that as well. Where did you find that? Was that on eBay also? I am curious because, there's sure no reason not to have one around if they're available. So I'm definitely going to look into that. I have a question for anyone who is doing or has a lot of experience with iPhone rear camera flash problems, because I've had like 3 in the last week, and one of them was an iPhone 6 that was pretty straightforward. It ended up being the LDO, which I didn't think was very common. So got that one changed out, no problem. Got a 6S that has no power coming out of the LDO and no flash either. Swap that over from a donor, but I don't know the state of the donor. And I think there was one other thing about it that I was having questions on. And I'm not sure if that's going to fix it. I think that I might have damaged the donor chip when I removed it, so I've ordered some of those. But it will be next week until I figure out if that solves the problem. So I'm curious, you know, outside of filters and caps, when it comes to, you know, I feel like I've tested everything I can that's not a data line that only connects under the processor. So I'm trying to figure out if there's something I'm overlooking. The only thing I don't think that you have access to on the 6S is the enable line. And other than that, you can test everything else for continuity. You know, there are obviously some filters involved in that system and caps, but I can't seem to figure out. I mean, I've got it narrowed down to I think it's the LDO, but I don't have one to put in there. So I'm just kind of brainstorming and hoping that if that doesn't work between now and then, I'll figure out something else that might be causing that problem. And then the other one is a 6 with the overheating problem, and that's this thing I've changed out I think everything on this, and it still goes to a black screen on the rear camera. Front camera works. You go back to the rear camera, and now it has the overheating symbol up in the top left-hand corner, I think it is. Yeah. And I cannot figure that thing out. But hopefully I will by next week, and then if so, I'll have a video for you, hopefully again. And then also I'll be trying out that microscope camera finally. I've actually tried to practice with it for a while because I wanted to give it a fair shot. I did have a lot of skepticism about using something with just a single screen, you know, without being able to have stereo vision. And it is not as bad as I thought, but it's certainly a challenge. So I don't know how far that's going to go beyond being in an inspection scope. And great for presentation. I mean, it's got an HDMI coming straight out of it. So that's what I love about it. You can put it on any screen you want. The focus is, I mean, it's impressive as far as the image goes. It can focus like, oh man, I think at the full zoom in, it's something insane. Like it zooms in way more than my microscope does, but it does start to get a bit fuzzy at that point when you get down that far. And I might even be able to fix that with some lighting, but I'm not sure. But trying to focus on, you know, I did a micro USB with it, not a problem. But when it comes to anything like, you know, taking a good sized capacitor off of an iPhone 6 board, no, so far. Barely, if anything. But any of the smaller chips, no way. So I don't know if that one's going to come through or not. Let's see. We are making progress on, it's funny, it went to repair. I was actually thinking of net neutrality. We're making progress on that, which I'm very excited about, and I hope that you are too. And, you know, one way or another. I don't try to convince anyone either way, but I think this is pretty important, and I think most people see the reason why. And we've already got like 3 states that are writing up legislation to have their own net neutrality on a state level. There it is. California, I hope, will be the next one. I think that it will. I don't know, but I can't see why not. And if we are, I'll be very proud of that. Let's see. And hope to feel like I had something to do with that, right? Where were we? Perhaps using, I wonder what I think of my phone Freezer Pro. How big is that green screen behind you, Mike? Oh, it is not that big, Harvey. It is, actually, it should be bigger because I made the mistake of cutting it off at the bottom so I can get to my outlets, and now I can't tilt my camera down the way that I want to. So that's actually going to get moved. It is roughly, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say 6 by 9, I believe. So it's about, yeah, it's about 6 wide and 9 tall. It's pretty small, which is why I have such a tight camera angle also. I really don't prefer to be like this up front, even on this smaller image. Excuse me. But you can only get back so far in here, especially considering my lighting situation, which is pretty much the minimum to make this even happen. So I've got to invest in some more equipment. But I'm planning on moving to a larger room, hopefully very soon, because there's some pretty cool stuff I can do with that. But it's about 6 by 9 and pretty basic as far as the lighting goes. Ordered a iPhone and Android 2.7 US dollars from eBay. It's complement a simulfocal, but what? Never replaces them. Oh yeah, I agree, Wayne. That's the thing. It's nice, but yeah, I can't. You know, it really makes me think that if you only had sight in one eye, it would be almost impossible, I think, to do very super small micro soldering stuff, and it would limit you on a lot of things where you have to have that perspective, be able to see depth as well. So I had never really thought about that before, but not being able to see two different, out of two different sides, that could be a real problem. I hope that both of my eyes last a little longer. Never replace them. Yeah, I wasn't planning to replace it. I'm actually kind of torn between a link that one of you actually shared with me on a scope that's very similar to the one that I have right now. I can't remember who it was. It might have been you, Wayne. But I'm looking at that. I kind of want to get the boom mic, but that thing's so heavy, and at this point in time, I have to move things around too often. So especially if I'm doing training, I have to kind of pack everything up and take it with me. So that presents a challenge. Maybe I'll order, so I think I might order two halves, one that's stationary and one that I bring with me. Let's see. Great for YouTube though. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. You'd be amazed when I did that little demo. I don't know if you saw it when I first unpackaged it. The image that you could see from the camera looking at the screen was pretty good. And of course, I'm in this weird situation with the HDMI going into a computer, because apparently that requires some stuff that I don't have. So I'm going to get that taken care of very soon. Oh man, so how has your week been? Who won money on the Super Bowl? I didn't bet though, so couldn't win or lose. But that was quite a surprise. Pretty amazing how people behave after a victory or a loss. The articulated stand, the one that I looked at, no, the one that someone linked in here was pretty basic. It was just a rack with a platform. It was like a platform stand pretty much, but it was very inexpensive. And it looked a lot like it might be an Amscope, but without a label on it. I want to say it was pretty close to what I got for, $375-ish, but it was only like $260, something like that. So it was quite a bit different. But it looked like it was good quality, but I was also wondering if there might be any issues with connecting a camera to it. And this is one thing that I'd encourage anyone who doesn't already have, or wants to look into a trinocular scope, and that is knowing what you're going to need to be able to record what comes out of it, because you can use an adapter to a DSLR, but it's not really ideal unless you have some other equipment so that you can capture that HDMI, which is okay. So you have to have, it seems like you get one, you need another. So I thought about going with the USB cam, and I'd like to hear from anyone who did, because I see a lot of people using them. And I think my concern at the time was that I couldn't use it on Mac, which is what I'm using my OBS. You see how everything just kind of links together? It's like, if I have this, then I need this, and I need this. And that's one of the things that Apple, I think, has really done well, if you want to talk about making money, and that is creating that loyalty by making it difficult for you to say no to buying something else that is part of their system when you're already using it. Sorry, I messed everything up again. There we go. Heavy duty, articulated, easy camera setup. Yeah, I'm really surprised they haven't been able to miniaturize cameras a bit as far as the type that you want to use for microscopes. Sorry, I'm surprised they haven't miniaturized microscopes a bit. I just lost my page here. What happened? All right, so where's my control room? Anyways, I'll come back to that. So anyways, that was most of what I had for you all today. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to attempt something. I just had an idea right now. So someone was asking about doing a antenna connector repair on an iPhone 6, I think, for the Wi-Fi. Those two little antennas on the back that are super easy to pop the connector off the board. Hopefully they didn't tear the connector off the board, but I think I might try that with that little scope and see if that's doable. It seems like it would be. I mean, there's nothing around it. You got quite a bit of clearance, so I think that might work. In any case, that's most of it for tonight. Hey, glad to see why you're able to make it back. USB cameras benefit a really highly frame rate than HDMI. Oh, okay. Well, that would probably help. You know, it's funny. The only real issue that I'm running into with this camera is the still images. It seems like one way or another end up getting overexposed. And one of the big drawbacks also about the DSLR is that you can't. You don't have access to all of the settings when you don't have the lens on. And in order to use the adapter for the microscope, you have to take the lens off. So once you do that, you have like 2 things that you can change. And so far, I've tried quite a few different combinations of them. And I still, when I zoom in especially, I just get too much exposure on the lighting. So, which is a bummer, because that's, you know, why I wanted to have that scope, so I could get really close-up shots and make some kind of artwork out of it. But I'll figure it out eventually. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will be back on Monday. Did I say gentlemen? I'll be back on Monday at 2 p.m. next week, and we have some fun stuff coming up. So next week we'll have Chris Voss, and I believe we may have one other person, but they've got to RSVP. But it should be a lot of fun. So if you can't make the 2 p.m., I hope to see you next week here at 6 p.m. And other than that, I'm going to sign off here shortly. I'll leave the comments open, the chat open for a few minutes in case any comments come rolling in. We have only, I think, 25-second chat delay. And I will talk to you next time. Have a great week.